Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Ariel Tzadok here from the Kosher Torah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com. Bringing to you another one of our, lessons of interest, discussing the types of Torah-based topics that most of my darling peer fellow rabbis won't touch with a 10 or even 100-foot pole, which is all the more reason why we need to address these things and bring them into the public arena. So tonight's topic is going to be this hollow earth. That's right, the hollow earth theory, which according to Torah is not a theory at all. And it is appropriate, or timely if you will, because time-wise we are now in the week of the traditional Torah portion, which we call Hayei Sarah, which deals with the passage of Sarah Imenu, the matriarch Sarah, who, if you know the Bible story, the book of Genesis, was buried in a cave called the double cave called Machpelah. And there are very, very interesting stories about this curious cave, and it opens up to us. Well, using the words of Alice in Wonderland, it takes us very, very deep down, deep down the rabbit's hole, all the way down to where it ends. So, before I begin with our academic side of discussion, which is just going to be a review of the literature on this topic, if you will look in the description of this class, whether you're with me live here on Facebook or you're watching this recording on YouTube or Patreon, you'll notice there is a link to a PDF, KosherTorah.com/capital P, capital D, capital F, PDF, right? / all lowercase inner earth dot PDF, lowercase. And this is, well, this lesson is going to be pretty much a review of that material. And all of the written sources are going to be in that material for those of you who want to follow along and have that material. Because whenever you're going to deal with controversial topics, all right, especially in the rabbinic circles, if you say something, the knee-jerk reaction of every or anybody in the religious community is going to say in Hebrew, Eifo ze katuv? Where is that written? Well, I am not going to share with you secret revelations that come to me from Eliyahu Hanavi. Sorry, I am Ariel, not the Arizal. I don't have revelations from Eliyahu Hanavi or anything of the kind. All I am is a simple old rabbi, and what I do, you can do. You know what I do? I go to the Hebrew bookstores, and I get those books that are regularly published, and I read them, and I translate them, and I make their teachings available to you. Okay? Now, those books are not printed for me. They're printed for everybody. So you might ask, well, how come then I teach these things and my other rabbi peers don't? Well, that's a good question, but you got to ask them. I will quote to you sources tonight from the Zohar. I will quote to you books, very famous rabbis, Rabbi Avraham Azulai from his book Hesed LaAvraham. I can quote to you from Menachem Tziuni in his book Sefer Tziuni. I can quote to you, well, of course, you know, when we talk about pre-adamics, the famous commentary to Tiferet Yisrael. I could quote to you all kinds of different source material. So from an academic point of view, you will recognize that what I'm sharing with you are valid Torah teachings, and that's really what is important. But for many of you who are not of Torah tradition, let me open this up a little bit for you a bit. You see, this is really one of the major gaps between Judaism and Christianity. Everybody in the world knows that the Christian faith of all sizes and shapes have adopted and embraced as their own our Jewish Bible. They call it the Old Testament compared to their New Testament. All right, no brainer there. Everybody knows this. But the problem, again, with Christianity is that they looked at Judaism almost as if through like a little, little telescope or a microscope like that. And they said the only definition of Judaism were these books, these few dozen books of the, in quote, Jewish Bible called their Old Testament. But that's never, ever been true. Judaism has always had dozens, and now hundreds, of other authoritative texts that we also embrace, not as what the Christians understand in the context of holy scriptures, but still as valid sources of religious inspiration and authority. Now, this is a big point in Judaism. We recognize what we call, in quote, the Word of God, or the Torah, if you will. And in our Aramaic, we would call this the Torah de Oraita. This is Torah from God, that's the authentic, legitimate stuff. And there is the written Torah, all right? And when we use the word Torah, we're not just speaking of the 5 books of Moses. We're speaking of the whole Bible and pretty much the entire scope of Judaic knowledge. You can call it Torah just in generic generality. Well, we have, again, the written Torah, which obviously you all know because you read it in the King James translation. But there is what we also call Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral Torah. Torah Shebichtav and Torah Shebaal Peh. Written Torah, oral Torah. They are both deoraita, they're both Torah. Now, how do we logically validate the existence of an oral tradition? Well, that's really kind of easy. I'm sure you've all read the Bible, all right? I don't care if you read it in the King James or whatever else. Tell me, you all know the Hebrew language? Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey? Well, that first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, what is that first letter again? Gosh, it's a Bet, right? Well, the Torah begins with Bet, so that first letter of the Torah, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Bet, right? No, it's not. What's that first letter called again? Oh, that's right, Aleph. Well, how do you know an Aleph is an Aleph and a Bet is a Bet? This is an argument right out of the Gemara, you should know, okay? Obviously, it's passed down. People knew, right? This is Aleph, this is Bet. It doesn't say so in the Bible. Nowhere in the book of Genesis is it going to say this is an Aleph and this is a Bet. It's a given. So therefore, those, in quote, realities were always known, but they were known orally. No one had to write them down. And you can say, yeah, Rabbi, but that's not really Torah. Okay, let's take level 2. As you know, in the Bible, there are many commandments given. Let's talk to the 10 commandments. In the 10 commandments, it says you must observe the Sabbath day. And if you violate the Sabbath day, you are going to be killed. You remember the famous story in the book of Numbers, where in which a guy's hanging out, going out and picking up sticks, and they put him in prison, and God says, execution. He violated the law, and therefore he's subject to the death penalty. Where the heck does it say that? Where in the 10 Commandments, or anywhere else, does it say? All right, it says you shall not do any work. Where does it say picking up sticks is work? I don't see that. But somehow, some way it was known. So, I don't know about you, but if I am in ancient Israel, and I am therefore subject to a law, which is the violation of which is capital punishment, I might want to pay attention to what the parameters of that law is. So therefore, if I want to know how to properly observe the Sabbath so as to avoid violation and therefore capital punishment, who do I ask? And in all due respect, being that they were out in the wilderness in those days in Sinai, printing presses were hard to find. Do you know they couldn't even have cell connection there? They were like in the fifth generation before, cell phones, right? How do you say cell phone? Cell phone, right? Before BC, before cell phones, fifth generation before cell phones, right? They didn't have any signals. They had nothing. So how did they find out what the Torah said? Well, obviously, guy every day, Reuben Shimon Levi would go and scratch his head and ask his elder, what's the Torah say? What are we supposed to do? He said, I don't know. Go ask Moshe Rabbeinu. So they go and ask Moses. Moses, hey, what are the parameters of the observance of the Sabbath that we're supposed to do? All right, well, Moses said, hey, I don't make this stuff up. This comes from, above. So let me go ask God. So Moshe, all right, good old Mo. We call him Mo for short, right? Mo goes and talks to Hashem, and he goes, Ribono shel olam, all right? He told us to observe Shabbat. Well, how do we do that? What are we supposed to do? And Hashem speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says to him, these are the parameters of the Shabbat with regards to different things as we've learned. The definitions of creative activity. That is what melacha means. It doesn't say it's forbidden to do work. Work is totally fine. That's avodah. But creative activity, melacha, is what is forbidden. Okay? God tells Moses. Moses tells the people. But nowhere is that written down. That is the oral law. That is the Torah Shabbal Peh. As you might know, if you are reciting the daily Kiryat Shema, Hear O Israel, right? And it says you shall bind them upon your hands, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. What the heck does that mean? Our sages learned from this the practice of tefillin. And some say, well, that's what the rabbis made up. Yeah, well, you want to know something? What those rabbis made up go back a long way, because we've even found tefillin, which are pretty much identical to the ones we use today. They found ancient ones in Qumran and at Masada, 2,000 years old. So it's pretty old traditions. Okay, these things are oral. Now, the oral traditions never did stop with the application to the ritual practices of law. There were also many other oral teachings, of which was what we teach here at our KosherTorah school, the prophetic traditions, the Kabbalah Nevu'it. And you read about these in places in the Bible. We discussed this in our series on Eliyahu, Elisha, in which, like it says earlier, if you read in Samuel and they had schools of prophets. And they were trained how to prophesy. Now, we've written about this and taught about this for years and years. Exactly what we teach to this day, thousands of years later. We're faithful to those traditions. Well, how do you know those are right traditions? Oral teachings passed down. You telling me we can have actual oral teachings passed down over thousands of years? Yeah, that's right. And including in these teachings, of course, are the contexts, concepts of the music, the dance, the alteration of consciousness, and all the kind of fun stuff that we talk about. But when you go into these states, you come into not just some blank psychological place inside your mind, in other words, within the organic chemistry of your physical brain. No, you're going off into other dimensional realities. And guess what happens when you go off into a different reality? Kind of like going off to a different country. Well, when you, in quote, get off the boat, or the Merkava, as the case may be, you find that you're bumped into or walked into a really crowded place. And if you look at any of the prophets, or who came later, the ascenders to the palaces and the like, they go off into all of these very crowded places. And they're filled with what we call malachim. And they have different names. You see, again, something lost in translation. We refer to angels all the time. And the seraphim are angels, and the malachim are angels, and the hayot are angels, and the ofanim are angels, and the kirubim are angels, and no, they're not. The word angel means, malach is messenger. None of these are messengers. No one is sending a seraph as a messenger. No one sends a kiruv as a messenger. Hayot are not messengers. All right? There are different things. It gets lost in translation. But again, we go off into these other dimensions, and yeah, you're busy. I'll give you a good example. And I've translated this before. It says in the book Ma'ayan Chochmah, the Well of Wisdom, which is an old text. It's included in the Yalkut Ro'im, and it's actually said to be attributed to Moses. That's how old the book is. Of course, he didn't write it, but okay, attribution. That when it came time to go up to Shemayim, heaven, to get the Torah, it says a cloud came down from heaven. Moses looking at the cloud says, okay, what do I do? Do I sit on the cloud? Do I walk into the cloud? What do I do? And it says a door opens up in the cloud. Moses walks through the door and the cloud closes the door. All right, now, you know something? I've seen clouds. And I've never ever seen a cloud that has a door in it. Well, Moses went into something, I don't know what. But the story gets even more interesting. As we've discussed in previous classes, how when you ascend through different realms, not only psychic realms, but I don't want to say physical, because when we go into a higher realms, what we call the Hechalot, or the heavenly palaces, yeah, we are actually traveling into what we call today outer space. But it might be a parallel dimension of space, or we're traveling through some dimensional direction as opposed to actual physical space. And this is why, just digress for a moment, there are two terms when we deal with the prophetic Kabbalah. We talk about the descent before the Merkava, Yoredei HaMerkava. That is the path of astral exit. And then we speak of Aliyot Lehechalot, ascent to the palaces. That's actually going up there. So one way you're going down deep psychologically, the other way you're projecting out like that. Different directions, different experiences, different dimensional highways, if you will. So Moshe Rabbeinu is going up. And as we said, that this world of ours is surrounded by a group of entities who are called Mazikim. They're a guardian species who are very hostile to humanity. And they speak about us very derogatorily. And even Ezekiel was referred to in a derogatory form. And they called him Ben Adam. Now, many people, especially outside the Jewish tradition, translate Ben Adam as son of man, which is what it means. And they say, oh, that's some special, holy, lofty son of the first Adam and the blah, 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 blah. And they idealize this into some messianic term. They spiral it completely out of control from what it originally meant. What it meant, using, if you will, modern vernacular, would be puny mortal. Ben Adam, you mortal person, what are you doing here? So Moshe Rabbeinu is ascending in his little old cloud, and he gets stopped by the head of this group who are called Mazikin. Mazik means, those who inflict harm. This is a group of, if you will, watchers who are very hostile towards the human race, and they corral us like cattle. And they'll, whack you like a cow. So they look at Moses coming up, and they stop his cloud. Don't ask me how you stop a cloud. I say they stop the cloud. Moses comes out of the cloud, and he confronts the head of this group. And his name is Kamukel. And he says, human, mortal, what are you doing up here? How dare you come up here into our domain and realm? He says, God sent me. No one told me. I don't have any word. I'm not letting you go anywhere. So Moses humbles himself. Oh, please, Mr. Angel, please let me go in the name of the Lord. Oh, Lord, I pray to you. It says Moses had the staff of God. Remember that one with the holy name? And he beat the angel to death. When was the last time you heard that one? It said, it struck him, Yabed min olam. That's exactly what it says. Struck him and he disappeared from the world. Yeah. Talking about, you'll forgive my French language here. That's real kick-ass, right? Moshe Rabbeinu, he's a tough guy, all right? Remember he killed the Egyptian? He's still one tough. I don't care if he's 80 years old. Put a stick in his hand, he was BAM! Anyway, that's what it says. My mind, Chochmah, go look up the Midrash. I've translated it. It's on KosherTorah somewhere. But that's not your traditional spiritual astral ascent. This is something rather different. So something, somewhere, Moses went someplace off planet from where he received the Torah as we have it today. Now, all of this plays into our understanding of a greater information and knowledge outside of the biblical texts of the history, legends, teachings of biblical characters. So, for example, we know very well that King Solomon was very much interactive with the pre-Adamic civilizations, whom we call in Hebrew Shadim. Our brothers in Islam called the jinn. They know all about the jinn. If you go read the Quran about the jinn, they interact with the jinn all the time. They know there are good ones, there were bad ones. Solomon, that is well known, documented, hinted to in the Bible, and documented in other ancient literature, some of which is in the Apocrypha, was interactive with many of these. They're not demons. They're not minions of Satan. This is a mythology, sorry guys, that came later. These are earthbound entities, many of whom are pre-Adamics, and many of whom worked with Solomon, helped King Solomon build the Holy Temple. You can go Google that one out there, Bing it, or whatever you want to do. You'll find the stories. They're readily accessible. But again, moving right along. We have always known in our Torah tradition that we are not alone in our universe. We have always known that there were higher advanced civilizations here on earth in physicality prior to what we know as the history of Adam from the Bible. This is hinted to in Kabbalistic literature, more so in the writings of old writings, but even in the teachings of the Ari, based upon the teachings of the secret meaning of Genesis chapter 36, which speaks of the kings who reigned in the land of Edom prior to there being a king in Israel. Now, if you go into books like Jubilees and the like, they'll give you a more historical context. But it has always been known that there are other deeper secret oral traditions, many of which are now committed to writing and available for you and me, all of us, to have access to it. And that's, again, one of the things I try to bring you here from our KosherTorah school. So, with this, we understand many of the things about the Torah traditions that are not just written in the black and white pages of the Bible in English translation, King James Version, and they are valid sources of information for us. Are they scripture from God? Are they Torah or Raita? Maybe not, but that's irrelevant, okay? They are valid teachings, all right? We don't need to split hairs. Well, this is this authority and this is that authority. You know what? So who cares? All right, that's irrelevant. Now, as we know, the Judaism that we practice today, this isn't biblical Judaism. Anybody who says that's crazy. Torah Judaism, but of course, but not in its biblical form. In its biblical form, we had a temple. We had a high priest. We had sacrifices. We don't do any of that stuff anymore. So, in its stead, we have evolved, and our sages, men of wisdom, who have learned the lessons of the Torah and the Bible, rise to the forefront. We have what today we call Rabbinic Judaism, Torah the Rabbanan. And the rabbis teach many things which are built upon the foundation of the Torah Shebichtav, written, and Torah Sheba'al Peh, oral. And the compilations of their teachings we find in both the Mishnah, the Gemara, and all the later Torah literature. And it is very emphatic, especially with issues of halakha, Jewish law, that as a rabbi, you very clearly demarcate and know the difference between a rabbinic-based law and a Bible-based law. because the applications of the rules and principles of halakha differ between the two. And anyone who doesn't know the difference between them, that's a very, very confusing issue, very, very problematic. But aside from all of these things, we have the legends, the teachings, oral traditions, many of which date back long, long, long time. I'll give a curious example for you. We're all familiar with the famous story of Enoch, recorded in Genesis chapter 5. He is taken and he goes up to heaven, and he is not God taken. God has taken him. You can follow this from the oldest versions of the tradition that are elaborated in legend or midrashic teachings, dating from about the 2nd, 3rd century before the Common Era. And these are what we call the books of Enoch. You have what we today call the first book of Enoch and the second book of Enoch. Later, after the destruction of the temple, we have what's called the third book of Enoch, which is a different story. And in these books, we have all kinds of curious stories, which are very different from many of the rabbinic tales that we have today. Doesn't make one right or one wrong, or one wrong or one right. What it makes it is different opinions on things. And later, in 3rd Enoch, Enoch is now identified with a certain angel called Metatron. And the Metatron is a whole long thing, who he is, what he is. Some say he's Michael, some say he's an angel of his own, right, that he's the high priest in the 4th heaven called Sivul. Read that in the Gemara, Tractate Hagigah. That's one of those palaces, places in apparently outer space. But anyway, getting back to this, it is taught about Metatron that he's like God's right-hand man, and legend teaches us that he was with God at the beginning before creation. And when God said, let us make man, etc., and so on, he's like talking to Metatron and those angels. So you have commentaries to the Talmud, which, comment on this story. And they say, wait a second. How can Enoch, a human being of the 7th generation after Adam, be Metatron, who was supposedly with God before creation? I mean, what the heck are you talking about? It's contradictory. And we go into a very profound insight that this angel Metatron is not unique. He's actually a species of entities who are not necessarily messengers to humanity, but of a higher species. And I talked about this in our Enoch course, and we call this the Metatron race. And that lesson is on our YouTube channel for those of you who want to listen to it. I know 10,000 or more people have listened to it, so you might find it of interest. Well, these entities are out there, and we communicate with them. In later literature, going into the days of Rabbi Yosef Karo about 500 years ago and the like, we tap into and connect to these entities who are referred to us by different names. 800 years ago, Abulafi associated this with what he called the Sechel Hapoal, the active intelligence, or we'd call the collective consciousness, which materializes in manifest form in what is later called a spirit guide or a Magid. Rabbi Yosef Karo, the famous author, Code of Jewish Law, big, heavy into Magids. Now, this is not, and here we go, we're going to delve in the inner earth right now. Everybody today gets into all this stuff. Oh, this is all psychological. It's all inside your mind. Baloney! Do you hear that? Baloney. Kosher. Glatt kosher. 999 baloney. All right? Good. Beit Yosef Shechita on it too. But what I'm trying to get to you is a story of understanding like this. Those palaces, those entities up there, we experience them here on earth in an ethereal form. In a previous Torah portion, we read how these 3 angels came to Abraham. And the rabbis, very clear to us, say they were only in what we call astral form. Abraham was in a meditative trance. And the whole story of the angels coming to him was actually in a trance state. And only then did 2 of them congeal into form and go into Sodom and Gomorrah, bringing death and destruction to there, kind of like what's going to be happening somewhere else real soon, but we won't get into that right now. And that's the way this stuff happens. Now, understand, the rabbis have always had arguments. Maimonides versus Ramban, Nachmanides, Are angels corporeal or are they not corporeal? This is important to understand. Again, we're not going to get into angels this, angels that, Hayot, Sifar, Seraphim, blah, blah, blah. Forget that. The people who you encounter. Where are they encountered? They are encountered in an altered state of consciousness, in a parallel form of energetic existence. We call this in our Torah tradition a halukah derabanan. In modern term, they call this your astral body. So when these entities come and we experience them, they are in that form. And therefore, the rabbis, for the most part, will say that's why they are ethereal. Well, that's only in their astral projection. Let me tell you this. If you and I go to their domains, we appear ethereal to them. But in case you haven't noticed, all right, that's flesh and blood. When I project out, then you see my glittery little Obi-Wan Kenobi body like you see in Star Wars. Now, many of you might be familiar with the new Star Wars that came out recently. And you had, in I think it was the second or the third of the trilogy, where Luke Skywalker, before he dies, he projects his form to fight his fallen student Kylo Ren. And they go through this whole big battle, and Luke isn't really there at all. But Kylo didn't get that. And he puts the lightsaber straight to him, and he's just standing there because he's halfway on the other side of the galaxy, and all that was there was his projected body. If you haven't seen the film, if you want to see this portrayed, that's a great example of what it's like. And this is nothing old or something phantasaical. The Gemara tells us something really bizarre, that Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, the famous author of the Mishnah, when he passed away, his body, just like this Luke Skywalker body, not glowing stuff like Obi-Wan Kenobi, would reappear every Friday night to his family, and he would eat and have Sabbath Kiddush with them. Really weird stuff. Oh, that's just a story. Yeah, but there's something to these stories. And how do you know? Because every one of us has some type of paranormal, we call paranormal, but we shouldn't, psychic experience. Now, this is where we need to understand. According to our teachings, remember we talked about Abraham, all right? Found this cave, buried Sarah in it. Legend tells us, an old story, why did he pick this cave? 101 caves. The rabbis make it very clear in the commentaries. This cave was a special cave, and the man whom he bought it from was selling it to him at the highest possible real estate value at all. And Abraham paid it without even arguing or debating the price. It was that valuable. What was so valuable about it? Cave is a cave, no? This cave, legend says, Abraham discovered was buried in it Adam and Eve. They actually went into the cave, and that he could smell some special fragrance, and he saw there these old people buried there. It was Adam and Eve. Now, they say that this was the entranceway to the Garden of Eden. That Adam and Eve, according to legend, were buried right outside of Eden, right outside the gate. Okay, you know what a garden is. Now, you've been to gardens, right? I know some of you, you're gardeners, right? You know what gardens are. Let me ask you, when was the last time you ever saw a garden grow in a cave? You know, photosynthesis, you need light and all that stuff. You don't got it in a cave. The Garden of Eden is not in a cave. So how the heck do you get to a garden through the cave? I'm going to tell you a story. I've told this story before. This story was told to me by none less than my own master in the secrets of Kabbalah, who taught me the oral traditions, Rabbi Meir Levi Alav Shalom, who was the top student of the top Kabbalist of Yerushalayim, Rabbi Mordechai Sharabi Alav Shalom. My Rabbi Meir, born and raised in Israel. In the olden days, he was an authentic Palestinian Jew. He's originally of Kurdish origins. And he said that in old Hebron, the Arabs knew very well the secret of the cave of Machpelah, Hebron, modern day Hebron. And they know that deep, deep down, hundreds of feet down, there's something really weird going on down And every now and then, Rabbi Meir told me, they would kidnap a Jew. And they would tie a rope around him, and they would lower him down into the cave. Tell him, tell us what's down there or you die. And the guy would go down. And all of a sudden, he said that this happened over and over again. So all of a sudden, the rope went gone. The guy who was going down disappeared. Pulled up the rope, and the rope wasn't cut. It was just gone. The guy, gone. No one ever saw them again. By modern understanding, we realized there was some kind of opening there, a doorway, a vortex, most likely similar to a stargate, and that it opened up directly beneath Hebron in a place we call inner earth. Now, here are some secrets. According to legend, in this inner earth, there is a Jerusalem above, and there is a Jerusalem directly below, and they're in conjunction with one another energetically, and supposedly in connection to a Yerushalayim in some place called Zivul, or we don't even know where that is. We call it the fourth heaven, wherever that is. And they are in constant energetic contact. According to an old legend, when the Ark of the Covenant was secreted out of the temple, it was said to be taken to the mountain of Moses. Now, the teachings say that the mountain of Moses is supposedly Mount Nebo, right? In modern day Jordan, where it says that Moses, went up and never came down. But other teachings said that it was taken by the priests from there, secreted to Sinai, and from Sinai brought down to inner earth. And that in inner earth, to this day, the Ark of the Covenant is active. And that there are bloodline descendants of the house of Tzadok, no family relation, please, and they're still active in performing the function, not with animal sacrifices, but with energy connectivity. Is this all real? Good question now, isn't it? Some more legends. According to an old tradition, the Messiah was born on the day that the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem. No, not in 68 AD, 586 BC. And that it was taken from his mother and taken to a place in inner earth in the Garden of Eden called the Bird's Nest, in which he was raised by angels. And he is alive to this day. Good gosh, that would make him, 2,586 years old? And we're still waiting for him. Okay, yippee-ki-yay. And that he is still there. Now, we go on and on and on with legends and stories. The Gemara brings us down another weird one. You might have heard of the Ark of the Covenant, and it was covered by skins of a curious animal called a tahash. So the Bible calls it a tahash. According to legend, the tahash was none less than an animal, like a horse with a single horn in its head. A unicorn. That's all legend. Oh, the Bible says that it's not. The Gemara says it's not. Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant was, according to teachings, covered with unicorn skins. But you never heard that one. How about later in the book of Job, where it speaks of the famous bird, the phoenix? Remember, that goes into his nest, spontaneously combusts, and reborn. Well, the Bible speaks of it. What else can I believe? It speaks about dragons. Certainly does. If you've ever looked at the description of Leviathan in the book of Job and seen its description in earlier literature, it was believed to have been a large, actual physical creature, not something symbolic or metaphorical. It was, by description, a real live Godzilla. I don't know about you, that's pretty intimidating. It's nice to read legends about a 400-foot fire-breathing reptile, but if something like that ever pops up out of the ocean, Godzilla style, like you see in the movies, well, that's a little different. So according to our traditions, unicorns, dragons, even Godzilla-like creatures, phoenixes, are all real. all in inner earth. There is even a legend, I'm sure you might have heard of, that speaks of the lost tribes of Israel going beyond a place called the Sambaton River, where in which it throws up rocks every day except the Shabbat, and being Shabbat you can't travel, so you can't go up. Where is this Sambaton River? Now, this is a story discussed in the Gemara. We've discussed this in our Legends of the Talmud series, and the class is available on our YouTube channel for those who want to see it, or listen to it actually. Apparently, Alexander the Great himself made it to inner earth, and that the lost tribes of Israel made it to inner earth. No, not everybody, but those who were guided there by intention. A lot of folks down there. Like I said, wherever you go, crowded place. Who else is down in this inner earth? According to Zoharic legend, remember the Garden of Eden was there. Adam and Eve were originally in inner earth. We are not the only ones in our Torah tradition to know about this. Even the Native American Hopi, who recognize an intimate connection with Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, they also believe they came from inner earth. Many others do as well. So, in this inner earth are the pre-adamic civilizations, many of whom are said to have escaped there when some calamity hit this surface world. When the flood of Noah came, many escaped to inner earth. Now, the pre-Adamic and pre-Noah civilizations were known to be what we would today call technologically advanced. You find reference to this right in the book of Enoch, where it says these, in quote, fallen angels came, and they taught people all this kinds of stuff that if you look at the list in Enoch, today we'd call this stuff technology. They had some stuff. They had some knowledge of things. Indeed, Rabbi Eliezer ben David, in his book Out of the Iron Furnace, Makor Mitzaref, and I quoted this in my book Aliens, Angels, and Demons, he makes a reference, an understanding of the Torah, that the pre-Adamics and the pre-Noahide even had nuclear technology, a technology which was discovered by those in the days of the Tower of Babel, and they wanted to fight back against those who they believed sent the flood. They were literally creating a spaceship. Go read my chapter in Aliens, Angels, and Demons. I go through all the sources, as wild and crazy as it sounds. Right? Our sages are very well aware of these things. Oh, by the way, just for the record, for those who say, well, Judaism does not believe in life in outer space, you know something, guys, you got to be a little bit more of a qualified scholar before you make such a ridiculous statement, because you're contradicting what other rabbis who came hundreds of years before you said. Okay? There are numerous sources, the rabbis who speak clearly and evidently about life on other planets in the physical domain. All right? Great rabbis of our generation and before, they spoke about them being Ba'ale Sechel Umada, masters of intelligence and science. Someone's talking about the serpent race. Remember the original Adamic race, right? The original humans, as Tiferet Yisrael brings down. The pre-Adamites were very highly intelligent human. They might have been the Neanderthal. I don't know. Let me just say something as a caveat here. Much of what we are taught today as, in quote, modern science is a lie. No, it's not an interpretation. It's a very skewered and intentional deception, keeping our eyes off of the real story. So if you go and create, I'm just going to discuss something on the side here. We go off into ancient aliens, and they refer to what, the guys on the show, half of which, of course, most of which I don't agree with, but they call it the ancient alien theory. And the question is, how come standard science doesn't accept it? They said, well, they don't have evidence and this and that. Well, there's an old saying, a lack of evidence is not evidence of a lack, okay? Science is always supposed to be open-ended with a question mark, never end with an exclamation point. That's religion, okay? But science today has become an atheistic religion. We don't believe that, that's nonsense. And the minute you poo-pah from an emotional point of view, rather than be open from an intellectual point of view, you're not being scientific. So in all due respect, many of the scientists today are not being very scientific. But that's beside the point. Getting back to stuff. We know that there were older races here on Earth, reptilian races that are indigenous to our planet. Curiously, all of this stuff is known in the collective consciousness. People remember this stuff. Even in the newer versions of the Doctor Who program, they had a representation of an indigenous human, an indigenous reptilian civilization living in inner Earth. This old stuff. People have known about this forever. You've, of course, heard about those access points under the city of Los Angeles. Probably all true. No joke. Now, these races down there have been around for a long, long time. They are physical, like you and me. Indeed, the Hesed Lavraham states that Adam, who is indigenous to inner Earth, Cain and Abel, born in inner Earth, that during the years that he separated from Eve, he procreated with all the others down there. And we have all different types of humanoid races in inner Earth. But apparently, for somehow, some way, their existence down there is much more peaceful and harmonic than ours. And there is government down there, and there's authority. And I will guarantee absolutely the one thing you do not have down in inner Earth is something which we call democracy. You see how perverted, corrupt that's become. No, it's ruled down there by the king. King takes care of stuff. And we have Mashiach, who is not yet a king for the surface. But underneath, Genesis, let's go back, chapter 6. When humanity was misguided, they came to the surface, everything was all messed up. A group of entities from out there who are called Anashim, excuse me, not Anashim, Ishim. They're called a group of angels called Ishim. Now you read about this in Enoch. They wanted to help humanity, and they came down to our earth. And remember, they were in touch with the people in inner Earth, and everybody knew everybody else. But they went against the order and the edict of how things were supposed to go, because there was a warning saying, you can't come onto this earth and maintain the energetic forces in proper balance to not be contaminated or tapped like those who came before you. The inner Earth pre-adamics, they got an agenda going on there. The serpent in the Garden of Eden, remember, he stood upright and talked with Eve, a humanoid reptilian, who was called a Menachesh, from Nachash, meaning he was an enchanter. He had knowledge. He had psychology and he had technology. An ancient technology which today we have lost, and therefore we mythologize and call magic. No such thing. But the technology underlying it is real. So, these entities got messed up. They saw those hot human women. Oh, hey, alien, I'd like to meet a girlfriend of an alien. Oh, yeah. Well, they all got messed up. So what happened to all of these? They had their children, who are called the fallen ones. And the Nephilim are not giants. We had races of giants. We have, you see half of these stories about the big bones they find? I bet you half of those are true, if not more. Because we have knowledge and known that the original races could have been up to 150 feet tall. So we've known about all these different forms of Adamic race. Giants, hobbits, even two-headed beings that are out there. So yeah, we've always known that these types of species exist. Where? In inner Earth. Whenever we hear of things popping up here like Bigfoot or Nessie in Loch Ness, most likely these are somehow connected through whatever ways, and they come up from below, possibly through vortexes or anything of the kind. Out in Tellico, where I used to live down in Monroe County, Tennessee, there were openings in the woods there, very well known. And there were races of beings there called the Nunehe, the wee people. And that's their domain. And somehow, some way, whether in one dimension or next, it's not as black and white different for them as it is for us. But the inner Earth, these races live down there and have been down there forever. Now, let's bring stuff, right, into modern times here. in, what was it, 1947, 48, when we had the crash at Roswell. Colonel Corso, who was the Army officer and you know, who worked with this stuff, they knew darn well it wasn't a flying saucer that landed. It was a flying wedge. And the one thing that was clear about it was that it was a local craft. It didn't come from outer space. It came from inner Earth. Most of the UFOs that we're seeing now, you saw recently the ones that the government has released and claimed, you know, what was it, the USS Nimitz was following? Those are all inner Earth craft. You want to know what those are? I'll tell you right now. Those are the old pre-adamics who today we would call Atlanteans. Yeah, that's them guys from like before the flood of Noah. Yeah, they're still around. And everybody tries to get in touch with them. The Buddhists, specifically the Tibetans, they know all about this. The Nazis, oh, they made every attempt to connect. That's why they had their base down in the Antarctic. Yeah, they really did. And all that other stuff is really true. And that's just the way it is. Their connection now, well, just remember, those on inner Earth aren't always looking towards our surface race in the most nicest way. The Mazikin. These Nephilim, right? Those who escaped to inner Earth. And they work with those angels. Remember those fallen angels? Whatever happened to them? Well, you read stories about how they were imprisoned and the like. You read that in the Enochian literature. But later literature tells us God punished them with the worst punishment possible. Oh my goodness. A punishment fitting the crime, which was that heaven said to them, you came down here to correct and repair the human race? Fine. We're going to appoint you as the guardians of the human race. We're going to make you watchers, like in the book of Daniel, chapter 4. And your job is going to follow the heavenly directions, the following heavenly edict. And you're going to stay with these old humans, these B'nai Adam, mortals, until we have made the final correction, which we call the coming of the Mashiach and Messiah and all the rest. And that these watchers are supposedly behind everything that happens on our planet. And you might say, well, does that mean they're behind the COVID virus? I thought the Chinese did that. Yeah, but somehow, somewhere, somebody put something into the mind of the Chinese to do this. Okay? You could look at politics today. They're behind it. And I don't care whatever you might want to think or wherever things today are happening in a concerted guide, directed by specific forces, all under the hands of God. This right out of the book of Daniel. And I should let you know, I'm coming out with a new book, which is going to be available hopefully on Amazon this week, Visions of the End of Days. It's going to be 3 parts of my commentary in the book of Daniel, teachings about dream questions and expanding understandings of dream analysis, as well as teachings about the end of days. And all of this is most fitting for what's happening right now. Because when we have contact, it's not going to be from those guys coming in flying saucers down from Mars. This isn't Mars Attacks. That's a movie. They're going to be from inner Earth. And they're going to reveal themselves most likely in a very deceptive way. And people are going to embrace them as messiahs. And that is when the end starts. And that very well might be coming a lot sooner than you can imagine. So, the whole understanding of inner Earth has to be taken for real. Now, let's talk about government stuff, conspiracies and cover-ups. Let's say, for example, our governments, because it's not just one, it's everybody. They know that there's life in outer space. Cool and groovy. Let's say that 50, 100,000 light years out there, we know that the aliens are out there. The Klingons are out there. The Romulans are out there. Mazel tov, Gesundheit, who cares? Think about it. If we had a report on the front page of all the global news tomorrow, we are now in contact with the Romulan Empire, or whoever you want to make believe you're in touch with. Mazel tov. Everybody's going to go, ooh, how entertaining, how cool. And you're still going to have to get up in the morning. You're still going to have to go to work. You're still going to have to pay your bills. You're still going to have to live your life, right? You and your wife are still going to have yelling and screaming matches, and the dog is still going to shed in the house, and all the fun stuff of every daily life is going to happen. It's really not going to make a hill of beans, right? Difference in your life, whether we are in touch with the Romulans or the Klingons or whoever else is out there, right? Who cares? But what happens if they're a little closer to home? What happens instead of being out there, they're here? And what happens if these entities have a technology, which we call astral, and that they can interact with us at the psychic level and influence us psychologically, even while we sleep, at all times? That they can come in and out of your house and your homes at any time, in any form that they can possibly desire. They can make you think that they are whoever they are. You remember those the little gray guys? Yeah. We know who they are. They're called Nishaya. Yeah. They're from down there too. Right? And they're part of the pre-adamics, and this is what they do. And somebody's telling me not to forget the mention of the moon. Oh, there are a lot of secrets about the moon. Oh, you don't want to go there right now. That would be another story that would take us forever to cover. The moon is not what you think. It's not just some pretty ball in the sky. They know the moon is hollow. They know the moon has an atmosphere, liquid water, and they've photographed stuff on the moon, and they know it. You go out there, you go look this stuff up. We've always known this stuff. I tell this to my buddies down Ancient Aliens. I said, don't go looking for some nebulous, alien guys out there. They're us. They've always been here. They haven't gone anywhere. They're watching. They're here. They're now. And because their technology is a psychic technology, not a technological one, external, but an internal one. Our governments shut their darn mouths because they know that at any time they could put a thought in anyone's mind, making anyone think anything at any time, and either bring life or death to the entire human race. Daniel, chapter 4, the Watchers. That is who we're up against. And our governments darn well know it. They've shot down a whole bunch of these craft. They know the Nishayans. They know others. There are all kinds of stories of going down there and interactions and the like. And, like it was recorded long, long ago, we, the surface race, are looked at almost as cattle to them. They look at us as a race to be corralled. We're like their pets, right? Those of you who've been with me long enough, you see Sierra around here every now and then. She's outside today. It's a beautiful night. She's having a good time. But I'll tell you this. When I'm with Sierra, don't you ever call her a dog in my presence. I'll throw you right out of school, right? She's my child. You darn well know it. You know how I feel about this. I'm dead serious. I learn from her. Because as I'm interacting with this species, I know I can speak to her. She doesn't understand what the word I'm saying. Nice dog. What does she understand? She understands emotions. She understands feelings. And we have a simpatico of connection. They have that same connection with us. It's not verbal. So don't go looking for an angel to come down in your room and start revealing to you, the secrets of anything. And don't think it's us against the Watchers. Don't think we're in competition. There's no competition. They're our guardians. But our guardians are not like us to think. Remember Isaiah 45, verse 7. God is the author of both light and darkness, good and evil. There is no division and strife. There is no God versus devil stuff. God's got it stacked on both sides. And that's why these angels, representatives, messengers of God, are called mazikin, because that's how sometimes God works with us. There are races out there. They're beneath us. When we meditate and we go off into our prophetic connections, we bump into them all the time. That's why it's called Yoreh Merkava. Sometimes you go up, sometimes you meet all these people. And this is why I only train people who are able to interact. Because you bump into somebody, they don't like you. Because you're it's like the dog coming into your nice, clean shag carpet ugh, darn it, it's going to shed all over, it's going to poop. Blah, blah. You know? Well, if you're dirty and you're going to shed, mess up the shed carpet, they're going to throw you out. That's why you'll always find those who make ascent, if they're not properly energetically balanced, they get kicked out. When they challenged Moses' ascent, he was forceful. He knew what to do. So there you go. Inner Earth, very real. Our governments, they know it. And that's why they don't tell you. That's why they'll make you believe that it's out there. They'll do anything to make you distracted from the truth. And that's why our society today has become a matrix, which everything you see, whether it be in the news or everything else, it's false. And you need to get the hell out of the matrix. You need to wake up. Sleeper has to awaken. At our KosherTorah school, those of you who know me well, this is what I teach. I'm not here to teach you doctrine, theology, or anything of the kind. I don't care. You believe whatever you want. I don't care what religion you think it matters. Nothing like that matters. The energetic balance and frequency of realities, of energies, that's what matters. And you need to experience this individually for yourself. Male, female, Jew, Gentile, free slave, that don't matter. This is what we need to do. Because as situations and circumstances are happening now, it's closing in on us. We see it happening all around us right now, and you darn well know what I mean. You know current events. It's closing in on you. And if you don't get out through the doorways now, it's going to be like in the flood of Noah. And those of you who know what that means, you know what I'm getting at. This is the time to practice these things. That's why our KosherTorah school is here. We're cranking out new books. We're going to get these all things out there. Our audio courses are available for you. Make or take advantage. And don't worry about Judgment Day. There's no such thing as real of a Judgment Day like that. The day of Hashem, something else. And it's not coming for a long time. That which we call Mashiach and the evolution into the higher grade and the intervention from the inner earthens won't be for a while yet. We're not ready, but we're getting there. So, know the times. Remember, I've shared with you in previous classes that you have to have your hand on the pulse of what's happening in the energetic reality. When you evolve and ascend and you become sensitive to these things, you see it. And the Rabbanit and I, we're taking steps. We know what to do. Rabbanit's been praying for this for the longest time. And only recently, developments are opening up. I'm not going to announce anything just yet, but time will tell. And you'll see things as they materialize. But you got to take this stuff seriously. They are not out there. Like it said in the, what was that, the X-Files. Remember the whole motto was, the truth is out there? No, that's wrong. The truth is here. The truth is inside. And they're going to do, the powers that be are going to do absolutely everything in their power to poo-pah this message, to downgrade it, to keep you away. Because they don't want you to know how out of control they really are. And who's really in control. Go into my book, Aliens, Angels, and Demons. I wrote about this a long time ago, put the chapter right in the book. I said, don't fear the watchers. Don't fear their agenda. All right? Just trust in God. You keep focused in the right, you'll be in the right place, the right time, the right way. But you got to be flexible. So keep your eyes on God. Do what's right. And that is the living, continuous, prophetic Torah. And God's grace, I hope that's what I'll be able to provide for you here at our KosherTorah school. Okay. You have the essay, documents all the materials here. Go look down in the notes here. You can get it from there. And somebody is saying you're seeing blue dragons with red eyes. Yeah, that might be who they are. That might be how they look. Or that might be just how they appear to you. Alrighty, guys. Aliens, Angels, and Demons. The second edition, which includes the disclosure essays, is also coming out soon. And you're going to see a whole series of my Kabbalistic writings all coming out. Boom, 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 boom. So check out Amazon.com for the books. They'll be coming out soon. Protection from Evil is available again at Amazon. And more to come. I will see you guys. Hey, check out the courses online. Oh, if you like this, check the like button for this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm supposed to say all this stuff, right? I see everybody else do it. I have no patience for this. I'm a good rabbi. I'm not a good businessman. It's always been my problem. I don't care. God's blessings. Be well. Pay attention.